Alright, let's start. Okay, so this is our ranking of all the Marvel Cinematic Universe movies. We're kind of getting ready for Infinity War to come out. We've been rewatching all of them, all the way up to Black Panther. So, yeah, let's get started. You want to start with your... We're going to start with the bottom of the list and kind of go to our favorite. So, what's your least favorite MCU movie?
Least favorite one is Thor 2, Dark World. It's not a horrible movie. I don't think any of the movies on this list that we're doing are horrible, but it's absurdly forgettable. And other than Loki, there's just nothing interesting happens. Nothing interesting happens to any of the characters or the story. It has the blandest Marvel villain, which is really saying something because Marvel doesn't have a lot of good villains. The only good things I can say about it are some of the sets and the world that they have are better than the first Thor, and it's the closest thing we got to like a realistic looking and real feeling Thor universe, because the first one everything was empty and bland, and the third one is just ridiculous. So I did like that, but other than that, the music is okay, but it's just a very forgettable movie.
Yeah, it's also my least favorite MCU film. Like you said, it's not terrible, but I don't think it's really a good movie either. It's one of the few Marvel movies I just kind of wouldn't really recommend unless you just want to see them all. Like you said, the villain's really bland, and that's kind of disappointing, especially for me because Christopher Eccleston plays him, and he's from Doctor Who, and I'm a big Doctor Who fan. And I also love Malekith, the Dark Elf from the comics, so they really wasted an opportunity there. And the movie is just really kind of a mess. Like there's too much going on, and it doesn't really know tonally what it wants to be. Sometimes it's really goofy, sometimes it's really dark and serious. Yeah, it's not very good. So, what's your next one?
My next one is The Incredible Hulk. This movie is very weird. Again, it's not a horrible movie. This is the only Marvel movie I would say where it doesn't really feel like a Marvel movie almost, and it's clear that at that point in what they were doing, they weren't really sure what they were doing, and they hadn't got it down yet. Again, it's not a horrible movie, but it feels like a early 2000s superhero movie, and not one of the good ones. The effects aren't the best. The villains are kind of terrible again. Some of the stuff with Bruce Banner is interesting, but most of it is not fleshed out enough, and it's just not the best movie in the world. Really, I mean, there's not that much to say about it. I don't even remember it that much, and we just watched it.
Yeah, I'd probably disagree with you a little bit. It's a little higher up on my list. I don't think it's. I think it's an okay movie. It's kind of forgettable, and it doesn't really fit in well with the MCU, as you said. But I think the villain is okay. Like he's at least understandable, and I think Bruce Banner has a decent enough arc. But I'll talk about it more later, I guess.
Yeah, it's just I remember liking it more the first time I saw it, but then when I watched it again, it didn't work for me really. Yeah.
So the next one on my list after Thor: The Dark World is Iron Man 2. So this movie is kind of a mess. There are some good parts. Sam Rockwell is really funny, and Robert Downey Jr. and Gwyneth Paltrow and all the cast really have good chemistry, like before. I think it starts out well enough. Whiplash has some interesting ideas and motivations, but then once he gets captured, the movie just really starts to fall apart. The whole subplot with Tony trying to fix the arc reactor and getting the new element, and his father leaving him the message in the video is really convoluted and contrived, and it just doesn't work. This is the only other really MCU movie other than Thor 2 that I think just doesn't really work or hold together as a movie.
Yeah, mine is also Iron Man 2.
So that's your third.
Yeah,
person.
my third one's Iron Man 2. And yeah, I mean it's basically just a complete mess. As you said, up until the part when Tony gets attacked on the racetrack by Whiplash, it's decent, but after that it just completely falls apart. Whiplash is in prison, so then he's not really in the movie, but then he gets released, and then he's working behind the scenes, and then not a ton is really happening that's interesting. Tony's dying, so he's just kind of acting like an idiot through most of the movie and feeling sorry for himself, and his relationship with Pepper's falling apart. So they're just arguing all the time. And I understand that you have to have drama and things have to happen between characters, but when they do that between love interests in movies, and it's kind of more of the case in TV shows, it just gets annoying because it's just unpleasant. Or at least when it's not done well, which it often isn't.
Yeah, it's very tiresome.
Yeah, so I mean, the whole movie, it's just a complete mess, and there's funny parts, but honestly, I kind of find it obnoxious a lot of the time, and it's kind of unpleasant to watch through a lot of it.
Yeah, and regarding the love interest thing, part of what's so frustrating is that it worked so well in the first one, and then they kind of subverted your expectations by having him reveal his secret identity, because usually that is a source of drama between the love interest and the hero. So it's like, oh, we're not going to have that this time, but then we have all this stupid drama anyway, and yeah. So since we both you did number 3 already,
Yeah.
so my number 3 is actually, and a lot of people are going to be mad about this, but it's Thor Ragnarok. I don't hate this movie. It's really entertaining at times, but man, I just don't really think it holds together. Again, it's just part of it's just a tonal issue. Everything with Hela is really kind of like epic in a way, I guess, or it's trying to be, and like dark, with like people getting massacred, and like Asgard is like getting destroyed and all these things, but it doesn't have any weight. Partly because everything with Thor on the Hulk planet is just so like lighthearted and silly, and Thor doesn't seem to be taking anything seriously, and it doesn't have a lot of emotional impact on him. So as an audience member, I just I don't care. Like if the whole thing was on the planet with the gladiators and everything, and it was just this lighthearted romp, like I'd be fine with it. For the most part. I mean, it's not necessarily what I want, but like I could roll with it. But
Yeah,
as it is,
if that's what they were going to do, then they should have just completely done that.
yeah. Like I said, there are things I like. Everything on the planet's fun. Jeff Goldblum is a lot of fun. It's cool to see Hulk finally talking and being intelligent, even if it's not like as serious as I'd want it to be. The stuff between Loki and Thor is probably the one emotional thing that kind of works. And it's really cool visually. There's some cool action and stuff. But yeah, as a movie, it just really disappointed me. As a Thor fan in particular. The Thor movies in general have been disappointing, but this one is particularly frustrating.
Yeah, I'm on my 4th one, and it is Thor Ragnarok. I really don't like this movie. Watching it again, I do think that you are right, where the first time I watched it, I was just frustrated with the whole thing. I didn't like how silly everything was, and I wish they'd made a more serious Thor movie. But I do think you're right, where if they just, like the whole movie had just been this crazy adventure on this gladiator planet, then might not have been ideal for me personally, but I would have enjoyed it a lot more. But every so often we go back to Asgard and the movie just stops, and it's not only tonally different, but it's just 90% of it is just Hela walking around saying exposition about things, and it's just like it really hurts the flow of the movie. We just keep going back to this, and like it's like, how is this relevant? I mean, I understand this is the reason why Thor is in a hurry. He has to get back to Asgard.
Yeah, I mean, really, that's the main plot of the movie, and it's like the boring part that we don't care about.
Yeah, it almost doesn't feel like it. It's like what I'm saying. It's just like, can we just get back to the gladiator planet? I mean, I don't love how ridiculous and silly it all is, but it is very entertaining. I will say that it's a very entertaining, crazy, colorful movie. But I don't love that they did that, but it mainly works. But it's really the two plots almost. It doesn't mesh together, and it really brings the movie down. And I don't really like it that much.
Yeah.
I don't know what they should do with Thor, really. I mean, they've tried doing it more serious, and they've tried some more crazy thing, and a lot of people like Thor Ragnarok, but it didn't work for me. So.
Okay, so my 4th, like from the bottom, would be Incredible Hulk. Like I said, I like it more than you do. I don't think it's a bad movie. It just doesn't really fit with the rest of the MCU. Like you said, it feels like kind of at odds with other things. A lot of that has to do with recasting and things that aren't really in the movie's control. But I do think it works okay, like emotionally. I think the stuff between Betty and Bruce Banner works like well enough. Like it's fine. I guess I would say. Like I don't think I wouldn't call it mediocre even. It's just kind of fine and sort of forgettable. The action stuff at the end is a lot of fun. Um, the effects don't really hold up, but yeah, like it's not a movie like that's hard to sit through anyway. I just don't have a lot of desire to watch it. Um, yeah, I don't have much to say about it, but I think I like it a little more than you do. So, what's your next one?
All right, so my fifth one is Spider-Man: Homecoming. This is another one that a ton of people really like, and this movie really didn't do it for me at all. I honestly, I find a lot of it just really stupid. Other than Spider-Man himself and Vulture and Iron Man, I find most of the characters to just kind of be annoying. All the high school stuff, it really annoyed me, and I didn't connect with it at all. And I just like wish we could get back to the Vulture stuff and that, and the main story with that. The humor, which there was a lot of, and again, you can do a funny Marvel movie, a funny superhero movie. Everything doesn't have to be super serious. I'm fine with that if it works. And I didn't think a lot of the humor worked, so that was also annoying. There wasn't any like really standout action scenes. I mean, it's all fine, but like Spider-Man, usually like there's a pretty cool action scene like in most of his movies. It's Spider-Man, you can do a lot of cool stuff with it, but it's just, I mean, this goes for a lot of Marvel movies, but the action is just kind of meh. It's not horrible or anything, but just kind of meh. I like, as I said, I like Spider-Man himself, and I liked his relationship with Tony Stark. It's very interesting, but the drama that's going on with school and stuff, I have no interest in, and I found stupid for the most part. The Vulture, by most movie standards, I don't think he's an amazing villain, but by Marvel movie standards, he's one of the better ones. I think a lot of that is mainly just in part to Michael Keaton's performance. His initial setup is interesting and where he's coming from, but in the end, really, he just kind of boils down to he's just a guy who steals stuff. I know that there's some themes running through it and parallels between him and Peter Parker, but he is decent at least, which is saying something for a Marvel villain. So, overall, the movie didn't connect with me. I found a lot of it annoying and dumb, but it's not horrible. But it's really disappointing for the first Spider-Man movie done by Marvel again, unfortunately.
Yeah, I do like Spider-Man: Homecoming more than you do, and it's a little higher on my list. I was frustrated by many elements of it, especially in comparison to the Raimi movies, but I guess I'll talk about it more later. So my next pick, my fifth from the bottom, I guess, is Avengers: Age of Ultron, which again might anger a lot of people because a lot of people really love this movie, although a lot of people hate it too. So I guess whatever with that. But this movie is a movie that I've changed my opinion on a lot over time. I liked it quite a bit when I first saw it. I thought that there were certain elements that felt rushed or like forced in by the studio, but I really liked it overall. But over time, I just liked it less and less. Partly it's just because it doesn't feel very cinematic to me. Like the special effects, I think, are just really shoddy for a movie of this like big of a budget. The action isn't really well done for the most part, I don't think. It's really, really rushed. The movie has no time to breathe, and as a result, it just feels like I'm being like having all these things just thrown at me. Whereas with cinema, you kind of want to be able to at least a little bit kind of sit back and appreciate scenes. So a lot of it just has to do with, I think, filmmaking and just them trying to do way too much in one movie. And then there are things that just don't work though. The whole romance between Black Widow and Hulk always just felt really odd to me. It works okay in the context of the movie. I just don't really see where they're coming from, with this being a sequel to the first Avengers movie, because there was nothing there between them, and it kind of feels like it comes out of nowhere. I guess it's just one of the many things in this movie that feels kind of rushed. Yeah, and that starts right away with Hydra getting defeated, in like the first scene, kind of hurting Winter Soldier to some extent because that was such a big deal, and they just kind of get rid of it, even if Agents of Shield rectifies it to some extent. Okay, and like on top of like all the things that they're doing, like trying to tie up from other movies and setting up new ones, they're bringing in new characters like Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver. Where like Quicksilver dies at the end, and I just don't really feel anything. And Vision, like they have to set him up, and that works better than like it could certainly. I think Josh Whedon deserves a lot of credit for making the movie work at all, because I do think this movie kind of works. I do like everything with Hawkeye a lot, and the one scene I do really like is the scene on the farm, which is the one time when the movie kind of slows down and you can kind of appreciate things for a few minutes. That and the party scene at the beginning. And then Ultron himself is always something I've had mixed feelings about, because I think it's an interesting take on the character, and I think James Spader's performance is interesting. It's not really what I would prefer, because I'd want a more comic book accurate thing, but I guess in some ways that's sort of like we've seen it before, Terminator type of thing. And some of the stuff with Tony Stark creating him is interesting and sets up things for later movies. Bruce Banner's involvement in that feels rushed, and everything with Thor kind of just doesn't work, and it feels like the movie doesn't know what to do with him. Man, I'm kind of going all over the place here, but that's sort of the way this movie is, I guess. So yeah, it's kind of a mess with a lot of interesting ideas and scenes, and yeah, I just find it more frustrating than anything.
Yeah, I think it works a little bit more for me, but I do agree with a lot of what you're saying, but I think there's a lot of good stuff in there, which is why it's higher up on my list, so I'll get to it in a little bit. Yep. Okay, so the sixth from the bottom for me is the first Thor. This movie isn't bad by any means, and I don't think it has as many problems as any of the movies I've stated before. I'd say this is the first one that I've talked about that's like a very solid movie that doesn't have any like major problem that breaks the movie for me. The main problem with it though is it's another one of the earlier Marvel movies, and they just probably lack of ambition is what holds this movie back the most. Like everything is just kind of fine in it, but nothing is really amazing.
Yeah, it's a lot of growing pains kind of feel.
Outstanding or anything. Like especially like in the world building and stuff. Like Asgard is it's just a dead CGI blah. Like it doesn't feel lived in or real at all. And then, but that's another problem where it doesn't, like, you're not engaged in the world, but the Asgard stuff is still the best part of the movie, because when you get to Earth, you have the less than stellar supporting human characters, and sometimes they work okay, but they're kind of annoying. The Shield stuff is kind of cool, where Shield comes in, but the best stuff is like the stuff at the beginning when Thor's just in Asgard, and then he goes to the Frost Giants world, and there's a big fight there. And Loki, he is a decent villain. He gets better in later movies, but he was the best villain up to this point, and still one of the better villains in the Marvel Universe. And I really like Odin in this movie as well. He kind of gets ruined in the sequel, but the Asgard stuff, even though the world feels empty, there's some good stuff in there. But overall, it's just everything's just kind of fine, and just there's just not that much engaging things that happen in it. I like Chris Hemsworth is. I'm sorry if I'm getting sidetracked here, but while doing this, I've been thinking a lot about Thor, because none of the movies have really worked that well, and like it isn't his fault. He does a good job as the character. I think it's more just they never know what to do with him. This movie it's not even that great, but it's the only one where he has he changes and has a character arc where he starts out as an arrogant jerk and then becomes a hero and a selfless person. But I think one of the main problems with all the Thor movies and any movie that Thor's in is just they don't know really what to do with him. He kind of went through his whole arc in this first movie, and then that's it.
Yeah, I think you're somewhat right about that. Like after this point, it's hard to know like where does the character go from here. And I think all three of the movies are tonally like they never feel that confident tonally. Like it's either at odds with itself or it just feels like we're not confident enough in this material to just give it to you and like really believe in it.
Yeah, they not only is it they don't know what to do with Thor, they don't know how to approach the world that he lives in.
I think that's really it. Is that the world they don't know like what to do with it. So this movie's I think a little higher on my list. So I will talk about it more later. But I agree with I think most of what you said. I think the human stuff works a little bit better for me than it does for you. Maybe partly it's nostalgia for me or something. I don't know. But anyway, the next movie on my list is Spider-Man: Homecoming. So like John Paul, I think I like this less than sort of the general consensus. Part of it is just the expectations I had going in, I guess. Like about a year before, like when it was first announced, that Marvel was gonna do a Spider-Man movie, I was really excited. In some ways, like I felt at the time that I hadn't really gotten the Spider-Man I was looking for, like a more optimistic sort of character who quips a lot and whatever, like a little more comic book accurate, I guess. But then in between that time, I kind of started falling in love again with the Sam Raimi movies, partly because they're so cinematic and it feels like his distinctive voice is there so much. And he really gets the character, even if it's not like everyone's ideal version of the character. He gets the emotional core of the character. So going into Homecoming with that kind of shift in my thinking, it was kind of disappointing just because that core of the character felt missing. Like there's never really a mention of Uncle Ben. I don't think they ever mentioned him by name. The whole like Spider-Man feeling guilty thing isn't really there, and I understand that they kind of want to get away from some of that and do something more distinctive, but it felt like it needed to be there and addressed in some way, and maybe they'll fix that in the sequel. But for me, that's the real thing that held the movie back, because I like some of the high school stuff. Maybe that's partly because I'm a teacher, and some of that like I can personally relate to,
Yeah.
like teen culture and stuff. I don't know. I mean, and, some of it's a little cliche, but I found a lot of it amusing. I think the main arc of the movie is interesting, but it gets a little bit muddled, where it's like, okay, I'm not ready yet to be like an Avenger. I need to just be like an everyman hero. But then Tony Stark offers him to be, and then he turns it down, and then in the next movie it looks like he's gonna be one, and like the way he proves that to himself is by fighting the Vulture when the Vulture's trying to steal Tony Stark's things, which seems like exactly what Tony Stark tried not to do, and it's a little muddled, and I think the movie has some third act issues, I guess. I do really like the scene where he rescues the other kids from the elevator. It's not like necessarily a great action scene, but it's really suspenseful. It kind of reminds me of the scene in Superman, the movie, the Christopher Reeve original, where he saves Lois Lane with the helicopter, which I guess, since I like that movie so much, maybe that made me like it more. Anyway, I'm starting to ramble. There are a lot of things I like about the movie. Like you said, the Vulture is really good. He's one of the better MCU villains.
Decent, at least.
Yeah. But yeah, it's lacking for me a little bit emotionally. But I think it's fun and it's a decent watch. So
yeah. Just to quickly add two things. With the action scenes, with the elevator scene, it just kind of felt just like the end of the first Spider-Man movie by Sam Raimi, a little bit, because it's not an elevator, but it's something like an elevator in that at the end. And then,
yeah, I mean, there's not like the choice
I know,
between the two, which is
it was weird because that reminded me of the Sam Raimi movies, and then the boat scene just felt exactly like Spider-Man 2, which
yeah, it does feel like at
that's
times.
weird. And then something that I felt was missing was, and I know that like this has been done in every Spider-Man movie and it can get redundant, but the fact that like he's always just getting beaten down and beaten down and beaten down and nothing ever goes right for him.
Yeah, that's really the classic Spider-Man.
Like I know that like it's always done, but like it really is like at the core of his character, and the best Spider-Man stories like do that. And like other than Flash being mean to him and him and like the one party scene, there really isn't any of that. Like he's liked by everyone. He just kind of hangs out with whatever team he's on in the school, and they all like him. And like it just didn't feel like everything was going against him all the time, which
it felt
you don't have to do, but it really is at the core of his character, and it what made the Sam Raimi movies good. Yeah, part of it anyway.
I was gonna say something, but I think we're gonna move on.
Okay, all right.
So I guess you're up.
Okay, so my 7 from the bottom is the first Captain America. Captain America, the First Avenger. This movie, the first half is really good, and then roughly around the halfway point, it falls apart, which is really disappointing because I never loved this movie. It grew on me the more I watched it, but the second half really, after he becomes Captain America and goes on his first mission and saves all the soldiers, it just completely falls apart. But before that, it's a pretty good story. Chris Evans' performance also grew on me. I didn't like him that much, but then the more I watched it, it worked, and I think he does a really good job. The setting is interesting and unique for a Marvel movie in World War II. As I said, Chris Evans does a really good job as a character. I like Petty Carter a lot. Tommy Lee Jones, he's always fantastic in everything he's in. He's very entertaining. What's his name? The doctor guy. Stanley Tucci.
Yeah, Stanley Tucci.
Stanley Tucci. He's also really good. There's a very good cast, and it's a good story about a little guy who he always does the right thing, and he gets rewarded for that eventually, and becomes the hero he always wanted to be. But then the movie has no idea what to do, so
once he gets to that point,
it divulges into just stop Red Skull by just
doing random action scenes.
Yeah, just randomly attacking him and Red Skull being mad. And then the end comes with Red Skull's stupid plan to just bomb some cities. He's just going to bomb some cities. That's his big plan. And then Captain America has to stop him, and then he does. And then for some reason he has to crash the plane instead of landing it for some reason. And then it really falls apart in the second half. It's very disappointing. And then they abruptly kill off Bucky in a scene, which it works better when you go back and watch it after seeing Winter Soldier, but in another aspect, it makes you wish that they had done all that better. So so unfortunately, it's the first half of the movie is one of the best Marvel Cinematic Universe things out there, but then it just completely falls apart in the second half. The music is also really good. It helps. I really like it up to that first half, and then it's very frustrating and disappointing, unfortunately, but it's how it goes with a lot of these movies.
Yeah. Okay, so my next pick is Thor. So like I said, I like it, a little better than you do. I think it's mainly because I do think the romance between Thor and Jane Foster works at least okay. I don't think it's great or anything, but I guess I don't I almost don't want to say this, but the relationship is cute almost. She has the whole science thing, and then he helps her with that, and it's her that helps ground him in the end, and realize that humans have worth and that he's not above them somehow. And I do really like Loki, and I think he's still the best MCU villain. And in this movie, even though it gets better later on, this is the basis for that, because this is where their relationship really starts, and we understand why he hates Thor, and and then it's not great. I mean, the special effects are kind of dated. I don't even want to say dated, because even in 2011 they didn't look great. As you said, the worlds often look empty. A lot of the humor is kind of not great. The Warriors 3 feel too humorous, cliche characters, which is kind of a shame because I think they're cast really well. I do like the score a lot, which it's grown on me since I first saw it. I wish Kenneth Branagh, because I really like him as a director, had gotten a chance to make a better movie. I don't know how much the studio was looking over his shoulder here, but it feels like it's not really his voice isn't really there. I think the casting, as I said, is generally quite good. The action is sort of mediocre. There's some logic issues with the way he gets his hammer back at the end, but I'm not going to get into detail with that. Yeah, I think it's kind of just okay, but I do have a lot of fun with it, and I find myself going back to it more than some of the other solo MCU films. So, yeah, it's kind of right in the middle of my list.
Yeah. I will say, I don't love the movie, but it does balance the humor and drama better than a lot of these newer Marvel movies have been doing, and like there is like a few really stellar moments. The part when Thor breaks into the Shield
Yes.
facility and tries to steal his hammer. The action scenes are entertaining, but then when he can't do it, that scene I always really liked.
And then the scene immediately after when Loki visits him,
Yeah.
and he kind of breaks down.
Yeah.
That's kind of the best part of the movie, and that's
Yeah,
sort
the
of
whole part.
the really the heart of their relationship throughout the MCU.
Mhm.
It's kind of built off that whole kind of moment there.
Yeah, and then I also like the part at the end when Thor has to destroy the Rainbow Bridge.
Yes and no, because on one side, yeah, but then the other side, like, it feels cheap because we know, like,
Yeah.
he's gonna see her again. Like, this isn't really that big of a sacrifice. Can't we just rebuild the bridge? But if you can kind of like forget about that, it works well emotionally.
Yeah,
So.
it's just unlike some of these movies, it's able to have humor and be a more lighthearted film, but also hit the dramatic beats it needs to.
Okay, so what's your next pick?
All right, so my number 8 is the second Avengers, Age of Ultron. Like you were saying, there's a ton of problems with this movie. There's a lot of things wrong with it, but then there's also a lot of things I really like. It's a big mosh pit of things, and there's enough things that I really like in it where that I enjoy watching it and think it's at least a decent film. I like Ultron himself. My problem with him, and this is a problem that I have with a lot of Marvel villains, is they get the part where he's an interesting villain, but he's not a threatening villain. There's no action scene where anyone's life feels threatened. I know Quicksilver dies at the end, but for the most part, when you're watching this, you're not in any way worried for anyone involved in it. It's just Ultron is just a bunch of disposable robots, which is it's disappointing, and it makes the action scenes just dull and boring. And especially the last one, it almost gets like a Transformers movie where it just goes on, and you have no investment in it because there's some interesting character stuff, but there's no real threat from the villain, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I will say I've gone back and forth on this movie a lot. Sometimes it's been like more near the top of my list, sometimes more near the bottom. I'm never near the very top, I'm like top of the middle, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But at this point, I think partly because of my disenchantment with Hollywood movies in general, and studio interference, I don't like it a whole lot. But I could see myself changing my mind again and liking it more over time. So.
Yeah. There is too much going on in this movie, and you can commend Joss Whedon for he tries to give everyone stuff to do and tries to give them interesting character things. Thor suffers the worst, where he really doesn't have anything to do. He just kind of gets thrown off on a meaningless and random and unrelated subplot, setting up kind of the future movies. Not really. I mean, I guess so, kind of. But he should. He tries to do things with people. It doesn't always work. He puts a lot of focus on Black Widow and Hulk, and that doesn't work that well. Iron Man, what he does with him works. Iron Man, I don't like where he is right now, but it's not, I don't like what they did with him. It's just, I think he's kind of a jerky dude right now, but he has a very good and for the most part, natural progression through all the movies he's in that makes sense. And it continues in the second Avengers movie, and the same goes for Cap, and they continue to do a good job with him. And Vision, obviously there's way too much in this movie, so they can only do so much with him. But the little parts, the little that he is in it, I do like him a lot. And the last scene between Vision and Ultron is another scene that I really, really like in these movies. Yeah, that's about it. You know, all the action, it's just a bunch of CGI, and the effects aren't that great, and it just gets boring and goes on. And they try to do way too much, even though some of it is very interesting and works.
So the next one on my list is Captain America: The First Avenger. So I think it's mainly just higher just because some of the other movies got shuffled around or whatever. Because I more or less feel the same way you do. That the first half is really good. The whole scene where he becomes Captain America and then he chases the guy through New York and uses the car thing as a shield. Mm-hmm. That's kind of one of the standout moments in like the whole MCU for me. There's just so many like emotionally resonant moments in that first half of the film. But the second half is just like really bad. But I do find myself going back to it. It is one of it's only the second MCU movie I ever watched because I didn't see Iron Man until like 2011. So it has a certain nostalgic value for me as well. The effects aren't terrible, but there's a lot of questionable green screen. I don't like the whole thing at the end with the Spread Skull's plan, as you said, not making sense, and I don't understand why he has to crash the thing.
It's just stupid. It's all just stupid.
Bucky is not as well set up as he could be, and his death feels kind of rushed and like it comes out of nowhere, and then like it doesn't really have enough impact on the rest of the film.
Yeah, that comes back to more Marvel not having
out as well as they could have,
game plan.
I want to talk a little bit about Hugo Weaving because you didn't mention him as much. I think he's fun as the Red Skull. Red Skull has never been like a hugely complex villain. I think he could be more threatening, like Ultron. He kind of feels just like he's just there to give speeches for the most part, and then when him and Cap fight, it just kind of ends really abruptly with the cosmic cube kind of disintegrating him or whatever happens. So it feels a little bit like a waste because Hugo Weaving is such a good actor and he's clearly having a good time. But yeah, like I said, the movie's really great in its first half and is a lot of fun, and it just kind of falls apart. So it's middle of the road for me. It could be one of the best ones. There was a time when I kind of hated it because of the second half, and it was so frustrating. I think I often forget how good the first half is because of the second half. But yeah, for me, it's really middle of the road. So.
I really like what's his name, who plays the original Ant-Man. I can't. You have to get his name. Come on, what's his name? He's
the guy's father.
You know, he's that actor.
Kurt Russell. No, not Kurt Russell.
something. His son is also an actor, right? He's one of the guys who has a son who's an actor too.
Michael Douglas.
Kirk Douglas.
Yeah.
Okay.
Michael Douglas, right?